It's a very good evening to you, Angela. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Thanks so much.
So just to recap on those charges and just a little bit of context of what has been happening to Gideon and how he has arrived at this point, obviously not as a result of his own doing, but as you say, what authorities are using.
Yeah, so Gideon, by the way, he's been in jail for a week. And today he appeared in court again. It was a bail application, and we're hoping to hear on Friday that he will in fact be released on bail. But what has happened is that Gideon wrote an article for a website that he works for, Bulawayo 24, and he has subsequently been arrested and charged, one for cyberbullying and two in relation to operating without a broadcasting license. Now, it's a really strange charge because, if you're operating without a broadcasting license, you would expect that someone would actually broadcast something, which of course he hasn't done. It was an article that appeared on the online site, and it's effectively because he's accused a business person of corruption, and this was in the article. And as you yourself have said, and as a result of that, he's been in jail since last Wednesday, and he's waiting to hear whether he will be released on bail, and that he's going to be standing trial. Just one of at least two other journalists in Zimbabwe are also standing trial. So I guess I should say to you and your listeners that comes as no surprise, because being a journalist in Zimbabwe is obviously not something that is not dangerous, and journalists are obviously targeted in Zimbabwe.
And I want to actually go to that point. Is he somebody who's been under scrutiny of authorities for a while now? As in, these charges, do they just emanate from this particular article, or is there a history of him being under the spotlight?
There certainly is a history in the past, but I can't talk to that. I am aware that there were issues before. But certainly in this respect, it's the first time that we've actually been in a position as the Committee to Protect Journalists where we've seen that he has been jailed and he's been detained at least for a week, and that he is facing these charges.
So just going back to the conditions under which journalists work in Zimbabwe, we've heard that it's not always easy. And as you say, the charges that have been preferred in this case are a bit strange in terms of the line of work that he's doing or has been doing. Have the government or the prosecution justified these charges and explained why they are appropriate?
Not yet. I mean, obviously there's a charge sheet, and that's where we've seen where the charges are. The case is yet to go to trial. So the state has not made its case yet. But just to say that, I mean, it's quite clear, and those around him have pointed out, and so has the attorney, that how can you possibly charge someone under the broadcasting law for operating without a license when that particular journalist simply wrote an article which was published, and I might add later taken down on a website. It beggars belief. And I guess it just shows the pattern of repression that one does see in Zimbabwe. As I said, journalists are facing, they are always under scrutiny. I mean, we've had two top editors in Zimbabwe who were detained. I speak here of Faith Zaba, who in fact was in court today. Her matter, she's been accused of insulting the president. Her matter has now been postponed. It's going under review in the High Court in Harare. And then, of course, there's the case of Blessed Mhlanga, who has been accused of incitement to violence after he interviewed a war vet last year. He spent 73 days in detention, had 3 bail applications that were rejected, and he's still facing trial. I think The trial in Blessed's case may be starting in March 7th. So these are the conditions that journalists are operating under. And obviously one also has to take the political context, right? Look at the fact that there is, very much like the African National Congress, what we've seen in our own country, South Africa, we have similar issues, internal ructions within ZANU-PF. We have the ruling ZANU-PF. We have the president who, it appears, wants to have a third term, and there is a push by the ruling party to extend the president's term to 2030. So obviously, journalists who are covering current affairs, who are exposing things in the media, are going to be under the spotlight and are going to be facing greater scrutiny, and certainly will, as we have seen, are actually either being prosecuted or being arrested. But what that sends out is a message to other journalists in Zimbabwe, right? If it's happened to Blessed, if it's happened to Faith, if it's happened to Gideon, it could happen to you. And so one is concerned that there's also, therefore, censorship and self-censorship as a result of what we've seen going down.
And that's what I want you to get to, because in this case, it's over the allegation of corruption. And this has to do with a business. What more, dealing with alleged corruption at state level? Has that dissuaded a lot of journalists from doing more investigative work?
There's some excellent investigative work that is coming out of Zimbabwe, and there are several journalists who have not been dissuaded. I mean, if I look at someone like Blessed, despite everything that he's gone through, or Faith for that matter, they're still doing really great journalism. There are journalists of a high caliber in Zim who will not be intimidated. And that is fantastic to see, because ultimately this isn't the case of us simply protecting journalists. There's a bigger issue at stake here. And with press freedom is the corollary, the public's right to know. And citizens have every right to know what is happening in their country. And therefore, in this sense, if there is state corruption, if there is corruption by business, whatever corruption, that needs to be exposed. And the people who need to be exposed and prosecuted are those who are responsible for the corruption, not the journalists who are exposing. And this is the irony. The messengers, the journalists, are the ones that are being jailed, not the people who are stripping Zimbabwe and the Zimbabwean citizens of their rights to have a functioning country with a good economy.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Angela, and we will keep our eyes and ears peeled on this particular story. That is CPJ Africa Director Angela Quintal speaking to us about the arrest of Gideon Matsikatidze, a Zimbabwean journalist who has written an article alleging corruption by a local company named Geo Pomona Waste Management, its leadership.